as we understand in war, there is no winner. Some lose more, some lose less. I mean, everybody is losing. The world is losing in this conflict. Very obvious. But then, taking Abraham Accord as a watershed, uh, how do you see, sir, the peace is evolving out of the conflict? I mean, I think to the extent I can see, I don't see peace emerging. But with your insights, how do you think that from Abraham Accord onward, the peace has a chance in this conflict?
Abraham Accords recapitulate, were signed around 2019 to 2020 with UAE, uh, Bahrain, Morocco, and lastly Sudan and Israel. These were to normalize relations between these four Arab countries and Israel. Uh, and there are experts who argue that October 7 happened because of Abraham Accord was being extended to Saudi Arabia. This was taken as a threat by the radical Palestinian elements, saying that if Saudi Arabia too normalizes its relations with Israel, uh, then there is no hope for a Palestine solution. This is what Israel had always wanted. They didn't want to surrender an iota of uh, real uh, assets to Palestinian state and still wanted to normalize the relations with the rest of the Arab world in the region. And that was not acceptable to Hamas and other radicals who decided to launch October 7 attack to ensure that the Palestine cause, as we call it, stays uh, as the paramount concern of the Arab Muslim Ummah. And therefore, uh, Israel uh, cannot be allowed to get away with normalization and pacification of the region. Uh, that was something which which is often action reaction kind of mode that was prompted it. Uh, Hamas has never fully explained why it undertook October 7, but uh, I think as of now, the when the when the fires are raging, as Prime Minister Netanyahu himself says, Israel is fighting seven enemies at one go. Uh, it is difficult to foresee any comprehensive peace in the region, but very often uh, the cyclic nature of the Middle Eastern developments uh, require inconclusive wars where both sides have exhausted themselves to enforce the sense that peace has to be somehow made to avoid similar wars in future. The wars that Israel and each of Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis have been fighting uh, has been pretty exhaustive. These are small outfits, Israel included, and they do not have long staying power as far as wars are concerned. Israel has never been at war for longer than 1 year. That has already happened. And therefore, Israeli economy, Israeli society have suffered. Israel's GDP growth rate has come down to 0.7%. Its rating is being pushed down for the first time since independence in 48 to every now and then. And the rating agencies are threatening to uh, call it call sovereign rating of Israel as a junk state. So those are the kind of issues that would eventually force a reconciliation, a war, ceasefire, and or at least the level of fighting that we see around would come down considerably as Israel and its enemies get to know that they cannot resolve the problem in the battlefield. Subsequently, a sense of Sulan peace would continue as it did after 73 war, as it did after 2006 Israel Hezbollah war, and that would allow the international mediators to work on some sort of uh, holding operation, and eventually, hopefully, uh, a more permanent ceasefire would be possible. But this is all uh, very distant as we see daily carnage and killing, uh, and threats being lobbied at, between Iran and Israel. So that remains a pie in the sky. That
Definitely not very happy picture that you are able to see, which is very sad. But then
absolutely.
in this process, civilians are the worst affected. I mean, there are lots of humanitarian organizations which are working around it, and then there are a lot of displacement of the people has been happening, be it in southern Lebanon or Gaza, Palestine region, or in Israel also. We have got Beirut. I mean, you have got a lot of evacuations have been happening. So civilians have been the worst victim in any given war, this being no exception. How do you see the kind of humanitarian aid or humanitarian efforts which will safeguard civilians in time to come?
It's a very important issue that you have raised, Dr. Khan. Uh, as I see it, involvement of non-state actors and a very neutralized beginning on October 7 has set the agenda for this war. And uh, I think it is safe to say that long-standing, sometimes 200-year-old laws of war, laws of humanitarian aspects of war uh, have been given a by. Uh, Hospitals have been attacked, uh, hostages have been taken, and civilians have become pawns in this war. They are seen to be legitimate targets, and there is a certain element of cynicism in all this, which is extremely disconcerting. This is despite uh, pressure, public pronouncements, and resolutions by various bodies, including uh, a genocide uh, accusation on Israel by the International Court of Justice, and in summon and process of issuing warrants to three Israeli leaders and two Hamas leaders for crimes against humanity. All these illustrate how backsliding this conflict has become. Let's hope that when we look back from future, this would not become a new paradigm, undoing whatever civilized behavior that we were expected to have in the wars in the recent decades. I think this regression is uh, is going to uh, the extremely important fallout of the war. And hopefully, when it's all over, the horror and abomination caused by the war, its war, would uh, repel people from this becoming the new norm.
I really sincerely hope so. But I was just looking at Israel and its preparedness, as they always have claimed to be having the cutting edge dev tech, as one would call it, defense technology. Those Iron Dome and drone and whatnot, they have kind of AI coming big way into wars. How do you see these new things which we have been always talking about is likely to shape and safeguard the civilians particularly, because it doesn't seem to be enough at the moment at least.
Yes, you are right. Each war brings in its own cutting edge technologies. As far as I can see, this war has had technological inputs at the two extremes. Uh, Hamas succeeded in October 7 in springing a surprise at Israel's fabled technology regime for defense and its putative intelligence apparatus because it went low tech. It didn't it totally avoided wireless communications of any kind, and therefore was able to uh, bring a surprise. And for hours after the attack, Israeli army could not uh, hold any operations because they had no inkling across the board. On the other end, high tech has been utilized by Israel to pinpoint uh, attacks, precision attacks on Hezbollah uh, commanders, including the head of Hezbollah, uh, Sheikh Sayyid Hassan Nasrullah, and his deputy, who was said to have been killed uh, day before yesterday. Uh, Now, that cutting edge of technology was useful because they were able to blow up the pagers, the walkie talkies, and this was something totally out of blue, as much as October 7 was out of blue for Israel. So the element of surprises from a technological perspective uh, continue. And I think the killing of uh, Ismail Haniyeh, the Palestinian Hamas leader in Tehran, of all places, also shows the outer reach of this technology. Uh, we have many other instances uh, of bunker buster bombs being used, of other uh, mm, other pieces of technology that we would come to know having been used only after the war has gone over. Hyper missiles, hyper cruise missiles were used for the first time during the war, and so on. So, technology, including artificial intelligence, has provided some breakthroughs and become force multipliers. At the same time, they have opened vulnerabilities by making uh, the end user uh, uh, somewhat arrogant and all believing that everything is under control and that no surprises can be sprung. That, as we know, is not the case.
All right. Let me now take back again to the geopolitical dimension of this war. I think over 7 decades of its existence, Israel's existence in the region, had somewhat started establishing not very comfortable but relationship with its neighbors. How do you think this current developments that has happened is going to, I think, give those uh, three finger salute or rebooting of the relationship with the neighbors of Israel? How do you see post-war evolution of Israel's relationship with its neighbors?
I think that's a question which is difficult to answer because the war is still going on, and if an Iran-Israel conflict takes shape in a massive way, uh, you can never uh, predict where would it end, which other actors would it involve. Iran has a tendency to retaliate against international shipping assets on the other side of the Gulf, etc. If it fails to get through to Israel and inflict harm onto the United States. Remember, the Iranians call United States the big Shaitan and Israel the smaller Shaitan. The Quranic description of evil. Uh, so it all has to be said. It all has to wait with suspended animation as to where is it heading eventually. But on the basis of what has transpired so far, it is remarkable for two things. One, oil prices have stayed stable. In fact, they have declined by nearly 10% during this year, 2024. That shows that the regional conflict uh, has been contained, and the observers and users of this vital commodity do not see it flaring up. Uh, Secondly, it is also remarkable that there've been there's been widespread resignation to this conflict continuing, but uh, no Abraham Accord members, no one even before Jordan and Egypt included, Camp David Accord members, have withdrawn from these accords. They have continued to abide by. They have downgraded their ambassadorial representation in Tel Aviv, but at the same time, no one has broken relations. To some extent, trade and people to people contact have been affected, but the, the, there has been no large scale regression. I think the governments and people on the street have had some, uh, how should I put, differences in this regard in the Arab countries. Governments would like to uh, stabilize the situation. They don't want to have umbers of fire between Israel and its non-state actors or even Iran uh, uh, to fall on their interests, their economy, their society, etc. At the same time, the street, the media, at what's happening to their Muslim brothers in Gaza, particularly, and to some extent in Lebanon as well. Uh, as I mentioned already, these three non-state actors, by being allies of Iran, have blotted their copybooks vis-a-vis most Sunni Arab regimes. So, out of their heart, these regimes have no love lost for either Hamas or Hezbollah or Houthi. At the same time, they don't want to say it too loudly because the street of the Arab world may take them to be as as sign that these are accomplices of the Israeli aggression or United States conspiracies. So they have to tread a path of being uh, savvy and in line with the street sentiments. Uh, but apart from humanitarian relief, not much seemed to have happened. And if this continues, uh, I think the, uh, the we would see a containment of the hostilities, barring expansion of Iran, Israel, that. If that happens, everything can get into reverse gear.